Welcome back to episode 4 of our Explainer series. Let's just dive right into it today. We're going to demystify something absolutely critical, the difference between authentication and authorization. If you spend any time managing Microsoft Entra ID, or hey, maybe you're prepping for that SC300 Identity and Access Administrator exam, nailing this distinction down isn't just a nice to have. It is literally the foundation for everything you'll do in a modern enterprise environment. So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with first principles. AuthN versus AuthZ. Then we'll map those concepts directly into Entra ID, walk through some hands-on configuration steps, troubleshoot a few common mistakes, and wrap it all up with a practical lab challenge. All right, part 1, first principles. AuthN versus AuthZ. We really need to start with the absolute fundamentals here, because every single advanced topic we tackle later builds entirely on this one crucial distinction. Let's put it as simply as possible. Authentication, often abbreviated as AuthN, is all about proving who you are. It's verifying your identity. Authorization, or AuthZ, is proving what you can do once you're already inside. Think of it like this. Authentication is the bouncer checking your ID at the club door, right? Just making sure you aren't, 3 raccoons in a trench coat. Authorization, on the other hand, is that VIP wristband the bouncer hands you. It dictates exactly which rooms or floors you're actually allowed to walk into. And that bouncer analogy? It brilliantly illustrates the core of the Zero Trust model. As you'll see in the SC200 and SC300 exam resources, Zero Trust operates on one main guiding principle: verify explicitly. That means every single access request, whether it's coming from an employee, a partner, or a vendor, doesn't matter. It must be explicitly authenticated and authorized based on all available data points. You don't just check the ID at the front door. You check that VIP wristband at every single internal door, looking at user identity, location, device health, and scanning for anomalies before you grant any access. Okay, listen up, because here is a massive SC300 exam tip from mapping these theories to actual protocols. You gotta remember that OpenID Connect, or OIDC, and SAML are your authentication protocols. OIDC is generally your go-to for modern cloud apps, mobile apps, and web APIs. But when we start talking about authorization, figuring out what an app can access on behalf of a user, we're talking about the OAuth protocol. Keep those two distinct in your mind for sure. Moving on to part 2. Concepts in Entra ID. Let's take a look at how these first principles actually translate into real architecture within Microsoft platform. So the crucial takeaway here for exam takers and admins alike is understanding how applications actually exist within Entra ID. When you register an app, you're really dealing with 2 representational states. You've got the application object, which is the global template, the primary definition of the app. But then you have the service principal object, which is the local instance, the identity created in a specific tenant. It's the service principal that's actually out there requesting tokens and getting authorized to do things in your specific directory. Basically, think of the application object as the architectural blueprint and the service principal as the physical building constructed in your neighborhood. In a global enterprise, you write that blueprint once, but you might deploy physical service principal buildings across dozens of different partner tenants. All right, part 3, hands-on configuration steps. Let's roll up our sleeves and see how we configure these access policies in the real world. You see, integrating a custom application into Azure AD, it doesn't happen by just flipping a magic switch. It's a structured journey. You start with a basic app registration to establish a baseline of trust. Then you configure your tokens, grant granular API permissions, and finally, this is the big one, secure admin or user consent so the app can actually function safely. Following this structured order ensures you aren't leaving any massive security gaps wide open. Take a close look at the API permissions interface shown here. Notice that admin consent required status. This is exactly where an administrator has to step in and explicitly grant tenant-wide consent for specific delegated permissions. It is a critical checkpoint to make sure an app isn't accidentally overprivileged. By acting as that human gatekeeper, you are actively enforcing the principle of least user access across your entire enterprise environment. Furthermore, Azure AD gives developers some incredible flexibility in the token configuration blade. You can literally customize the default claims being sent inside the token. For example, maybe you want to add an optional group claim or tweak naming conventions to meet your precise business authorization requirements. And here's why that matters. This data in the token is exactly what the application uses to make its final authorization decisions. If you configure these claims incorrectly, you risk accidentally granting broad access to sensitive company data. That's exactly why getting this granular detail right is absolutely crucial. Let's pivot to part 4, troubleshooting common mistakes. Because let's be real, even with perfect design, things break or get misconfigured. Let's explore how to investigate and fix some common identity issues. Before we even look at the logs, we have to adopt the right mindset. Assume breach. This is a core tenet of modern security operations. If an application's credentials or a user's session gets compromised, strict authorization boundaries are what limit the potential damage. You want to minimize that blast radius and prevent lateral movement, which is exactly why we configure all those granular API scopes we just talked about. A tightly controlled blast radius is honestly what saves an enterprise from a total system compromise. When authentication fails, the Azure AD sign-in logs are going to be your absolute best friend. Looking at the activity details, they provide specific error codes, like 50126 here, and a plain text failure reason. In this case, error validating credentials due to invalid username or password. This lets you pinpoint exactly why a user was denied access. Was it a conditional access policy blocking them? Or, just a user frantically mistyping their password before they've had their morning coffee? As you investigate your own environment, keep an eye out for these 3 critical enterprise pitfalls. First up, user-registered apps. If your users can register their own applications, malicious apps can easily gain unauthorized access to your tenant. Just turn that setting off. Second, the dreaded lockout. Failing to configure at least 2 cloud-only break glass emergency accounts is a huge mistake. If your federated identity provider experiences an outage, these accounts are literally the only way you can get back in to fix the problem. And finally, relying on legacy authentication. It's like a security zombie that just won't die. Block it using conditional access immediately because it completely bypasses modern MFA. And that brings us to part 5, the practical lab challenge. Now it's time to take all this theory and configuration knowledge and actually put it to the test in your own environment. I really want you to look at your own Microsoft 365 setup and honestly ask yourself a tough question. Do you know exactly what every single application in your tenant is doing? Have you explicitly verified the authentication and authorization of every single app? Actually, scratch that. It's more like, can you even identify all of them right now? So here is your hands-on challenge, pulled directly from the foundational week of the Application Governance Masterclass. I want you to build a simple inventory sheet. I know it sounds super basic, but it is incredibly powerful. Go through your Entra ID tenant and document exactly what's on this list: the app's name, its business purpose, who owns it, which users access it, what data it touches, what specific API permissions it holds, when it was last used, and any risk notes. Finding apps with no active owner and high-level directory permissions is a massive security risk, and it's one you can fix today. Ultimately, authentication and authorization aren't just set and forget tasks. An app that needed read and write access last year might only need read access today. Think about it. If an attacker hijacked an overprivileged app in your tenant right now, how long would it actually take you to notice? Keep exploring, keep questioning your configurations, and I will see you in the next explainer.